This is Sean. Welcome back to my channel. Please help me out by pressing the thumbs up button if you find this video or information helpful. Please subscribe to the channel if you find it useful. And if you have any information to share, maybe something happened to you, looking forward to that dialogue. And also I encourage everybody to dialogue with other people who comment on these videos in a respectful manner, though. We do have some very knowledgeable people in our security community. Hey, Top Gunner, welcome. And they also provide some useful input. And if I defer an answer to your question to somebody who's answering you already, it's not like I don't want to answer it. I believe that the answer is sufficient as well. We have a lot of content creators that provide useful answers, and I think that you should consider subscribing to their channels as well. So today's video, I want to talk about domestic violence. How do police handle these types of incidents? From the get-go, I want to talk about private security, how to handle these situations. So I think I want to touch that first because, let's face it, like 70% of the audience comes from private security, and like 10% are very interested in a career in law enforcement. So I want to give them a perspective of just different ideas. So domestic violence, should you deal with it as a security officer? If you work in an apartment complex, some type of housing unit, you probably deal with it a lot. My suggestion to you, if you see some type of dispute between a man or woman, or a man or man, woman, and it's some type of domestic dispute, do not get involved. I also want to mention, if you're in a relationship, it is very common to disagree with that other person. It might be slightly unusual for somebody to yell at the other person, but just because somebody's yelling at somebody else, that doesn't mean that you should just call the police. You got to play it by ear. If you think it's escalating, then certainly call 911. Just a loud argument between the two. If it's not escalating, it's up to you if you want to call the police. But once again, it's normal for people, especially if they're going through some type of breakup, to be loud and boisterous. But it's not okay for them to start putting hands on each other. Now, let's just say you see them putting hands on each other. If you're working private security, what should you do? My answer is not going to be very popular. I think that you should observe and report. If you have some type of body camera, record the event. You can be used as a great eyewitness later. You can submit your camera's evidence, your footage as evidence later on. But I would not get involved. This is what I found. If you get involved, they might turn on you. So, when I started my law enforcement career, there was a domestic violence situation. I went to go arrest the male half. When I did that, when I put handcuffs on, he started resisting arrest, and I started bringing him to the floor. All of a sudden, this lady jumped on my back. Well, she's the one that called in the first place. She said, "Stop, get off of him, stop it." And then once he was taken to the ground and placed it, I think it was me and my FTO, my field training officer. We're in the process of putting in handcuffs. The little boy, who's like 5 or 6 years old, I'll never forget this moment. He tugs on my leg and says, "Please don't hurt my daddy." This whole time I was thinking, I signed up to be a hero. I feel like a scumbag. I don't feel like I did anything worthy. I didn't save anybody. And then, sure enough, like the same night, she bailed him out. And then next week, he was back at the house. I always remember those words, "Please don't hurt my daddy." And he was tugging at my leg, little cute boy. Everything just like froze, like you're trying to subdue a violent person, and all of a sudden this statement just caught me. This is like more than 20 years ago. But that's the reality of the situation. I'm there to help, and then now I got the female who called 911 in the first place jumping on my back, attacking me. As a private security officer, you might run into the same circumstance. This person is all of a sudden going to be your adversary and then start lying about the whole event, saying, no, he didn't hit me. This security guard is just making up a story. Now you're going to have 2 against 1. And physically, you can have 2 against 1. Guys, I'll say this, okay? Men are usually stronger than females. At a domestic violence scene, you do have to be careful for females, but males are the ones who are going to end up hurting you to the point that you're going to end up in the hospital, okay? When you enter a house, or you demand to go into a house to make sure everything's okay, and I'll put that with quotation marks, you're infringing on one man's castle. The whole castle syndrome begins. That basically involves, you're not going to come into my castle. There's no way. This is my home, and you're just a visitor. You're an unwelcome guest. You think that's going to sit right with a guy who has a type A personality, who's very violent, who has been controlling somebody who's helpless for 5 years or 10 years. He had all of the control that he always wanted to. That involves physical violence, control with the money, control with everything. And all of a sudden, here you come as an outsider trying to control that situation. It's not gonna sit well with you. I know that a lot of you guys train in martial arts. You try to invade into a man's personal space, your martial arts might not come in as handy as you thought it was, okay? At the end of the day, the question is, why didn't you just call the police while she was getting beat up? Okay. Was this lady about to die? I mean, there's different circumstances. Like if I saw a lady getting her hair pulled and bashed against a wall multiple times, that's a life and death situation, and actually intervene. But it's up to you. It's totally up to you. But many other times, I don't think it's the risk. I was working patrol again as a law enforcement officer, and I told you guys the story before. These 2 private security officers detained this guy for allegedly domestic violence off property. Right? This is like an encounter that happened in the middle of the street that's like 3 blocks away from the property. She said, oh, he hit me. So the security officers end up putting this guy in handcuffs. I investigate the incident, and I find that the primary aggressor was the female. The male was acting in self-defense. Those handcuffs came off, and they were changed out. They became the handcuffs of the female aggressor. What I'm saying is, you might think that you know what you're doing. You might think that you did your investigation well as a private security officer, but at the end of the day, you did not go through the same level of training that police go through. There's extensive investigation training, domestic violence training, that you got to go through. And private security, and I'll tell you this because I am a private security instructor, there's almost no domestic violence training that teaches you how to determine the primary aggressor. And the primary, like, why do you need to know who the primary aggressor is? Because that is the person who should be in physical custody. That gives you more of a reason to put that person in handcuffs. And you have to understand what is evidence that's self-defense. If you don't know, or you think you know based on no training, you're making a bad decision. Especially these guys essentially made a de facto arrest, essentially committed false imprisonment, essentially committed kidnapping, because you're placing somebody in custody against their will and you're moving them from one location to another. Although that location might be the street to the grassy area. that's like 20 feet away. That's still technically a kidnapping. Now, obviously, there is defense. Your criminal defense to that is always affecting a legitimate private person's arrest, right? But obviously, in those circumstances, it wasn't a legitimate arrest. Now, would they seek criminal prosecution? Probably not. But civil litigation, absolutely. Slender says, hey, Sean, I ended up coming to become an Arizona resident. Hey, welcome to the free land, Slender 16901. Welcome to the free land. Man, that's awesome. Like, I would love to move to Arizona. Man, that'd be the greatest thing. If you guys don't know, me and Slender are neighbors. I mean, we're not neighbors, but we live very close to each other. Good guy, awesome guy. He's been a loyal subscriber of this channel for, I don't know, is it 2 years? Provides useful input. He attended one of our courses. Overall, awesome guy. So I'm so glad you moved to Arizona. Okay, so let me talk to you about discuss how a domestic violence situation is resolved in law enforcement circles or law enforcement organizations. Give me a minute to catch my breath. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Onward. So, what normally happens is the police will show up in pairs. You guys seen that incident that included the same agency where the Acorn deputy was working at? I did some tactical debrief on that with the team that I work with, and we critiqued the response. We don't show up with one deputy or one officer to a potential domestic violence scene. That's a big no-no. What happens is you run out of lethal options because when you're going through like an open door, it's usually a lethal presentation. You normally have your gun out when you're dealing with areas of the unknown, doors that are being opened, depending on the circumstance, right? If you just have one deputy trying to resolve the incident, that limits the options, because when the door opens, you don't pull out a taser on a possible domestic violence scene. Now in that incident, they went to the wrong house, which is a topic of a whole new story. But what you do is you'll wait for two, and then you'll just listen to see what you hear through the door. Am I hearing someone's being smashed against the wall? Am I hearing someone calling for help? You just wait a little bit and just listen. Out of sight, hopefully out of mind. You wait, maybe even for a third deputy, a fourth. Then you knock on the door. You announce yourself, police department or sheriff's department. You step back into a position of cover. Maybe that might be the stairwell, or like a half of a hallway where there's some type of coverage, where you can just let the situation breathe, right? Next, what you do, if you think that there's some type of exigency based on the facts at hand, a lot of times these doors are open. The person that's calling, they want you to come inside and they'll leave it open, or sometimes they just leave it open. So what you do, you check the doorknob. If it's open, you push it open, and then you let it breathe. Meaning you step back, you take the appropriate angle, you look inside with the flashlight, you listen, you hear, and then you take every angle. You take another angle. You take an angle, you take another 2 inches, another 3 inches, until you finish slicing the pie or conducting a threshold evaluation, which is basically you are looking inside without even entering, right? Again, If you're private security, these are not steps you want to take. This is meant for the law enforcement audience. And if you're in private security, you're wondering what police do, this is what they ought to be doing. Then what you do is you do a call out. Again, police department, announce yourself. Somebody announces themselves. Hey, officer so-and-so from the blank police department. We got a call of domestic violence. I'm gonna need you to step outside. Okay, go ahead and make your hands visible. Put your hands up. Turn around. Doesn't matter if it's male or female. Check for weapons. Have them step to the side. Hopefully, there'll be a third officer, a fourth officer. That person, depending on the circumstances, might be handcuffed, maybe not. You're absolutely able to do that at a domestic violence scene, depending on the circumstances. Then if there's no announcement, and you believe, and you need to finish conducting a safety check, then you can send in a team of 3 to inspect the house. Most circumstances, you probably have your firearm out. You have a less lethal person backing up a potential shot from somebody that would have a lethal. You don't search your area of responsibilities with any less lethal instrument. It's lethal. Okay? If you make contact with somebody in there, depending on the circumstances, you handcuff, or you just make sure that person doesn't try to go outside and make contact with the person, even verbal contact with the person outside. When you got kids involved, interview them separately. Each officer will interview separately, or one officer will interview separately while the other officer is watching that person, and you're getting all sides of the story. Don't ever jump to conclusions. I'm telling you, I have a lot of experience in resolving these types of situations. When I first started, I used to think that the male is always at fault. I don't know why, but that's the kind of, I guess, biases that I had. Now, obviously, I had evidence to back it up, but those were my first impressions a long, long time ago. Beyond statute of limitations ago. I got training, I got more experience, and now I know that it's like 50-50. 50 female, 50 male. It just, when males get violent, they leave more significant injuries because males are generally stronger. Okay? You get both sides of the story, and then you determine, did a crime happen? Was there a relationship, and what's the extent of the relationship? When you get cops that are involved in domestic violence, there's a little bit, they think that they're clever, and they're going to say, oh, I don't know this person. If it's a dating relationship, oh, well, we haven't even dated. We just got into an argument, but we're not even boyfriend-girlfriend. That's what they will probably claim so that they don't get arrested for domestic violence. Maybe for something else, but not domestic violence. So the way domestic violence works at most law enforcement agencies, if there's probable cause to believe that somebody committed domestic violence, you should make an arrest. It's usually you should, it's not you shall. You should make an arrest for domestic violence. That's the way it works. I don't believe in that strategy. It's all because of the whole Nicole Brown, O.J. Simpson incident. The police would ask Nicole Brown, would you like to make a private person's arrest against O.J. Simpson? And then I think she would say no. She ended up losing her life later on. So she ended up becoming murdered. So they passed legislation basically that would require a more proactive arrest from law enforcement, and all the other states copied the California model. So I don't believe that that's the best course of action, is arresting, is a mandatory arrest. I find that sometimes it destroys the finances from the family. It may not be may not be the best decision. I personally don't like to make decisions for somebody who's been in a relationship for 10 or 20 years. I understand why it's a law that law enforcement should make an arrest, but I don't agree with it. However, in law enforcement, if you're not following policy, you can you can definitely lose your job. Okay, so if I determine that there's enough probable cause to believe that there was somebody in that relationship that committed the crime of domestic violence, it's a mandatory arrest. If there's no physical injury, usually a domestic battery, which is usually in California, it's just a misdemeanor. I don't say it's just, right? It is a misdemeanor. If there is injuries, like visible injuries, or complaint of like major pain, like, oh, my kidney's hurt, my bone feels like it's broken, something visible, or complaint of major injuries, or there's an act of strangulation in California. The criminal code section, I think, is 273.5 subsection C. Subsection, I think it's C. I'm not positive for attempted strangulation, or I think strangulation. It's a strangulation issue, even though there's no injuries, it's still a felony. Okay. You're gonna end up booking the primary aggressor. What I mean by primary aggressor, if two of them are involved in, we'll call it mutual combat, right? The person who gave the most significant injuries is the one that goes to jail, even if the one with least amount of injuries started the whole fight. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know if I can agree with that every single time. I don't agree with this mandatory law, but I see why it's useful. So what you're supposed to be doing is asking for an EPO. Hey, would you like a emergency protective order? And then there's a list of other resources that you have to provide to this victim. Those in private security are probably saying, oh, that's a lot to do. Well, yeah, it's a lot to do. There's a lot of training involved. That's why you should not interject yourself in a lot of these situations. The person's going to end up getting booked. If it's a felony, you're going to have a high bail amount. If it's misdemeanor, it's a lower bail amount, obviously. And you'll be able to see a judge within 48 hours where you will basically say you want to plead innocent or guilty. Your report is typically due within the 48 hours. If you're in law enforcement, you might not be able to go home on time. Even if you work a 12-hour shift or 16-hour shift, I've worked like 25-hour shifts because my domestic violence report wasn't complete yet, and I had some strict sergeants that I worked under. Okay. An EPO in California, it's only good for 7 days, I think. 7 days. I hate getting EPOs. Many times, see what you're doing, in my opinion, is you're taking away a responsibility that the victim has. I mean, when you get an EPO, victim's going to say, oh, somebody is doing something for me already. I'm not going to follow up because his officer got an EPO, and that's all that needs to be done. I don't like to do that. But again, it's one of the requirements. If you want this person away from you longer than 7 days, then you're going to have to file for domestic violence restraining order that you can do with the help of a victim's advocate. For 30 days, it'll be valid, and then there's a hearing where the defendant is entitled to claim his part or her part of the defense. And if the judge feels like there's enough cause to continue this restraining order, I think it becomes permanent for like 3 years. Guys, if you're military, domestic law enforcement, this screws you up because you are not able to have a gun, be in possession of a gun. Now, I know some police officers I work with, partners that got restraining orders. Again, their ex-wives or ex-girlfriends know that this is a way how to get back at them, right? Take away the job that they love. And again, I'm not being vindictive towards women. It's just that I have seen these situations with really good men. I've seen the women just turn around. But again, it can go both ways, right? I've worked with 99% men more than women. But yeah, you can't possess any firearm. So what officers would do is they'd be assigned to the front counter for like a whole year until they get the situation resolved, right? I mean, it's terrible for, and then the thing is, like, it's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just probable cause. So if the judge feels like there's probable cause that you committed all of these allegations, then you get a restraining order against you. Whereas the burden of proof to convict you in criminal court is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Not all doubt, but reasonable doubt. I mean, there's two different levels of evidence. Whereas the lesser of the evidence requirements can cause you to lose your job. And if you're in private security, a restraining order can end your armed security career. Give me a minute to talk about this, because, man, this will never leave my life. It'll never leave my mind. I had a guy that worked private security. Cool dude. Always talk to him. Very nice guy. And, we talk and just about some random things. One day, his wife, soon to be ex-wife, they're going through separation proceedings. She asked, being the supervisor, she asked me if we can serve him with a restraining order. I was the supervisor in charge, and one of my guys brought that to my attention. I said, we don't serve restraining orders. That's what the sheriff's department does. So we can't help her. And he told the person, we can't help you. And I, as a sergeant, they want to speak to a supervisor. I backed up the officer. I said, well, unfortunately, we don't provide the level of service. The thing is, if you provide unequal level of service, that's where you're going to get sued as a department, right? Unequal level of service. You can't just serve a restraining order for one person and not do it for someone else. So the policy at the time was we don't serve anybody, because the sheriff's department would ordinarily serve the restraining order. So she was fine with it. I remember this little kid. It was a she's too, very, very cute little girl. I want to say about a week later, he went to his estranged wife's house, shot the dog, and then grabbed his 2-year-old daughter and it ended her life as well. He took his own life. And when he passed, the guys removed his body, and the 2-year-old was underneath. They tried to resuscitate the girl, the baby, the 2-year-old, and to no availability. I tell you that story to show you how dangerous it is, serving a restraining order. How dangerous it is to disarm somebody, right? Because that restraining order that he had against him, that needed to be served, involved a gun takeaway order, which would involve taking away his license to carry a firearm. So I illustrated the story. I hate talking about it. It's awful, but hopefully somebody will learn from that and understand how dangerous this is, dealing with domestic violence situations, dealing with someone's life. That's how dangerous it is. Guys, imagine if you're this guy's employer and you tell him, hey, you're terminated because of some workplace issue, or you're terminated because you can't have a firearm anymore, and this is an armed contract. Just imagine, he's gonna look, if somebody is willing to take that out, to take out his anger on a defenseless 2-year-old little girl, imagine what can happen to you. Okay. Let's see. Here, Andy's here. He says, "Oh, I thought this was about Mike Glover." No, no, this is not about Mike Glover. But hopefully, it gives you guys some perspective about what happened. I mean, I'm not even gonna touch the surface on that one. That that's just a mess. That's a mess, and I don't want to. I don't want to have this live stream go on for past 30 minutes. But hopefully, if you guys, it'll give you guys some insight on why he was arrested. Andy G says, "Do you have any advice on insurance for a new security company?" Randy, thank you. Shop around, right? Shop around for different insurances. Don't use the. Oh my goodness! I just give a sad story, and I was gonna say don't use a shotgun approach. He used a 40 caliber pistol, his work gun, by the way. Anyhow, back on topic. Don't put on your application security projects that you're not going to actually fulfill. When I started my security business, which I don't have anymore, I rather do the consultation part, the training portion of it. I put on there, I'm going to go bounty hunting at clubs and bars. I'm going to work at housing projects. Well, that's a red flag, and I was banned for applying for one of these insurance companies. I got banned by like 3 companies. I could not apply for them. I think it was life or 5 years. One of them was Brown Year Insurance. It's like, basically they gave me like a lifetime ban from applying because basically they know that next time around I'm going to turn the application and remove all of those security projects that involve more of a liability. But I would be performing those contracts. I mean, I really wouldn't, but to an underwriter, that's what I would probably do, even though that's not the case. Slender says that's horrible. Yep, it's there. Richard says, hope your day is going well, boss. It is. It's going well. Thank you for asking, though. Randy Nunez says, loss of any technical skill license or certification and any kind of loss of driving license when your job requires you to do either. It is difficult. Yeah. Hey, guys, if you lose your driver's license, a professional license, for a lot of hardworking Americans or just hardworking people in general, that's hard. I know that the most stressful okay, so there's a couple things that are life stressors that can involve somebody going to depression. That involves, number one, the loss, obviously the loss of a loved one is up there. Number 2 is the loss of a job. And I think number 3 is like moving from like one residence to another. But the loss of a job is up there with losing a family member. Yeah, it's a thing. It's terrible. It's horrible. I'm telling you guys, it's hard, man. I got fired from law enforcement a long time ago. I got my job back, but I ended up becoming involved with the police officers union, and I spoke up against all of the madness that was going on. I even stood up at a city council meeting and I said, hey, this person right here is crooked. He's doing this, and that. And I pointed at the chief of police and I go, this other person is involved in this. And what ended up happening was I got terminated. I got 3 internal affairs investigations for excessive force. And then I got the boot, right? So I fought for my job back. I got reinstated. I got all of my salary back. I got a demotion when I came back, but I came back as whole. And I always say this: I have nothing at all to cover. Somebody did like a 4-hour video about me that I am, that I'm a fired officer. I'm impersonating a peace officer, which isn't correct because I'm still active, right? The California Post reviewed my file and found that there's nothing in my file that would preclude me from continuing employment as a peace officer. I passed the Senate Bill 2 test. What else was I going to say? My file was examined by the district attorney's office, who determined I am not a Brady candidate. if you are on the Brady file, in the state of California, you cannot testify anymore. So basically, if you are a liar, you use excessive force, and again, I got cleared from all that. You're going to have a difficulty testifying, and all of the evidence that you enter into court is going to be dismissed. I've been through the reamer. I've been through that. I've been through the Court of Appeals. And I'm telling you guys this, that when I lost my job, I lost my career, I don't want to say anything on camera, but it hit me. It hit me rock bottom. But what did I do? I wrote a book called The Private Patrol Operator. I wrote another book called The California Legal Investigator. I started a private investigation business, a private security company, and I became successful doing that. And then I got a job teaching criminal justice at a community college. The director, I'm sorry, at a private college. The director at that time knew the shenanigans that goes on in law enforcement. And I want to say he saved my life. Like he like listened to me, and he believed my story, that I'm not making this up, and I'm not going to let him down. And it's crazy because I remember calling him a couple of years ago. It was like 10 years later. I was in tears because it was the anniversary date. And I told him, "Hey, sir, I just want to thank you for giving me a second chance in life." I said, "You know what? I know you're getting older, and I want to tell you this, that a lot of people didn't give me a second chance. I couldn't even get hired in private security. But you gave me a way out, an outlet, and you gave me a second chance in such a way that I was able to mentor a lot of young people that were interested in a career in criminal justice. You let me work there for 6 or 7 years, and I owe my life to you." So I just want to tell you, I hit rock bottom. Like I had to ask for food stamps, unemployment, and I could totally see that other people that lose their job, how much of a downfall that is, especially if you have like a family to support. So, JA is here from New York. Welcome to the live stream. You're a little bit late, but that's okay. Randy Nunez said, "I'd be honored to serve alongside you." I'm telling you, man, Randy's original. He's helped me out so much in my development of being a tactical operator, a SWAT operator, a better shooter, a better teacher, and he's asked for nothing in exchange. I mean, people like that exist out there. He comes out here, he spends his own nickel and dime on lodging. It's truly, if you've ever trained under Randy Nunez, Global Veterans, I'm telling you, I don't get paid to say this, but he is one of the best mentors that I have out there. Slender 169-101 says, "That's what's wrong with society. Once someone blows the whistle, they try to dirty laundry." Yeah, that's true. And again, I have no dirty laundry to air out there. Google my name if you want. I'm on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. All of my qualifications are on there. Everything. I did have a civil court case. It's a retaliation case against my employer, in which they admitted to retaliating against me because I blew the whistle, right? But that is not out there because the only case that on me that's out there is the Court of Appeals, right? Because it's public record, it's a published decision, which has all my information in there, but they don't have my civil lawsuit, where my employer is essentially admitting to retaliating against me for being a witness. But again, that's not public record. So again, I don't feel the need to defend who I am, I guess, dirty laundry that I have or I have not. I'm moving forward, and I'm so glad that many of you are moving forward with me. You guys trust me. You guys probably researched me. So I really appreciate all of you guys. All right, guys. So I'm out of here. If you have any questions, concerns, or additional comments, let me know. Take care.